Hi there, today we're going to continue working on our setup. Whenever we bring our project up, it occupies a terminal for good. Let's release a terminal while Docker works its magic. There is a specific mod for this called Detached, allowing Docker containers run independently in background, freeing up a terminal for other tasks. So just stop it. And now we can use the same command with -d argument. As you can see, terminal is free for other commands, for example ls. But how to check what's running at the moment and what's its ID, or at least something we can use to communicate with the containers? For that we can use a ps command. So docker ps. Now we see what's going on in the background in a very detailed way with IDs, names, ports and statuses. And we can actually see what's inside containers using docker's exec command. So docker exec -ti, which allows us interact with the container in default way, basically with the standard input, which is our keyboard. Now we have to copy an ID, for example this one. And now we have to specify a command we want to execute in that container. In our case, it's gonna be bin bash. This is a fully working remote-like connection to a container. Basically, you can consider it as a virtual or remote machine. We can even see the files we have connected via volumes. Let's check the path. PHP templates. This is it. Change here, path. And let's list all our files. Index HTML and test PHP. That's exactly what we have connected. Index HTML and test PHP. Obviously, it's not that convenient using that PS to find an ID and then executing another long command each time. Let's try to use at least one command for it. Docker ps command has some convenient params for that, such as filter to narrow results to a single desired container and format to get only its ID. So filter uses regular expressions to perform a search by one of the columns. I'm gonna be using the name. So docker ps -filter, our column name, which is name equals, and our regular expression. In our case, it's gonna be a simple name, for example, PHP. Yep, this is it. So we have that PHP inside of the name. That's why we see only one line. And obviously, if I use Drupal or Flow, I'm gonna see all the lines. Let's check it out. Flow, yep, and we see all the containers. Okay, let's get back to our PHP command. And now we're gonna use format argument. That's pretty simple string argument and it uses some kind of formatting. So it's gonna be this. Let's check it. Yep, format. And now we can use command substitution to compose a one-line command to access a container. For that, we're gonna need this command. Let's wrap it with brackets, $, and this format is gonna be our substitution. Substitution basically executes what is inside brackets and substitute the whole thing with a result of the command. So this thing is gonna be our ID. So what we're missing is docker exec minus ti. This thing is gonna be our ID and bin bash. And this is exactly the same PHP FPM container prompt. Pretty long command, and obviously it's super inconvenient using it all the time. So what we can do is to automate it with another very powerful tool, Make. Make is a command line tool for automating tasks in Unix-like systems. To cut long story short, Make simplifies project management. For that, it uses Makefiles, which are basically a set of commands we want to execute. Let's add one to our project. Make is more powerful than we're gonna use it for, and as always you can Google its documentation, but I guess what I'm about to show you is pretty self-explainable and enough in most of the cases. Make is more powerful than we're gonna use it for, and as always you can Google its documentation, but I guess what I'm about to show you is pretty self-explainable and enough in most of the cases. Makefile consists of targets. Each target is basically a script, like a bash script. There are some ways Make handles those targets. In our case, it's phony, and basically it means it's a regular script. So, phony, let's name our target PHP shell, and then we have to specify the name of our target. And now we can use our command. At sign at the beginning of the line means we do not have to display the command itself, only its output. Let's try it out. Oh yeah, in Makefiles we have to use additional word here. Shop. Yep. And now, yep, it works. It's the same PHP FPM container we've seen before. With this approach, we have to specify a make target to access each container. So, for example, we can copy this. Let's say we want to have access to our Nginx container. And here we have to specify Nginx. As you can see, those commands are exactly the same, except that filter param. So we can make it even more useful passing that as an argument from the terminal. Let's remove this, we do not need it anymore. Let's rename it to shell. Make has a variable, it's called makeSymDgoals, and make stores all the terminal arguments there. Let's play around with it. Let's print that variable, echo, capital letters, makeSymDgoals. Make tst hello. Yep, and now we see that we have that tst hello and some additional output. Make thinks that each word, each argument is a target, so we can execute multiple targets at the same time. In our case, we're gonna use only first argument as a target, and rest would be a arguments for our target. So we only have to hide this annoying line. For that, I'm going to add a dummy target that does nothing. And let's test it. Now we have to get rid of the name of the specific target we're at. In this specific case, it's TST, this one. For that, I'm going to use filter out command. So again, substitution, filter out, something we're about to filter out, and close the bracket. Make also has a substitution or a variable for this specific command name, which is $@ sign. Let's test it now. But what if we're missing those parameters at all? And empty string will break our initial command. I'm gonna add some kind of protection. For that I'm gonna use Linux or command. So $, substitution, this or something else. In my case, usually it's PHP, because from my experience, in most of the cases, I use PHP to get access to Drush to do something with the Drupal. Let's test it. Yep, and Nginx, for example. It showed us one extra line that Nginx is up to date. That specifics of make, just ignore it for now. And now we can use this here. And we do not need this anymore. Let's give it a try. Yep, that's PHP. In this case, we have an error because we do not have a container with the name that contains Nginx in it. So, Docker PS. In our case, it's web. So, make shell web. Yep. And this is it, I guess. 91D, Nginx 91D. Yep, exactly. As you may have noticed, those are automatically constructed names of folder name, service name, and a numerical suffix. And we obviously depend on container names. So let's change it to something we want instead of automatically generated ones. For that, let's open Docker Compose, and there is a setting for that, which is basically called container name. Let's call it Drupal Flow Nginx. And I'm going to do the same for all the services. So PHP, DB, PMA, traffic. Let's check it. Docker PS. We have to restart our containers to see some changes. So Docker Compose stop. And you know what, we can make it a bit simple using the same Makefile. For that, let's copy this. Let's name it up. And our script is gonna be Docker Compose up. And the same we can do for stopping the containers. I'm gonna use down. So stop. And now make up. Yep. But we have to use -d here. And also we can specify a default target. So if we call make without any arguments, it's gonna call something. I'm gonna use up as a default target. So now if I do simply make, okay, and now let's try stop, make down, all stopped, nice. So make, and now let's check our names. Docker PS, yep, as expected, Drupal flow PMA, Nginx, PHP. Let's go back to the Docker Compose file. And what is pretty obvious here, this repetitive Drupal flow string. We have it in our host name, we have it in our containers names. So if we decide to change it, we have to change it in all of the places or use some kind of find and replace command. But there is kinda a trick. We can use .env file. .env files are like key value storage, holding some names, versions, and more. Let's see them in action with an example. So we have to create that file, and it's .env. Let's create our first variable, and it's gonna be project name. Drupal flow. To make it work, we have to include that file in our Makefile. So include .env. And now we can use that variable inside our Docker Compose file. So it's gonna be project name. Yep. Let's fix it in all of the places. And also we can use it in our host names. Let's give it a try. So make down, make up. Oh, sorry, curly brackets. Let's change it. And now let's give it a try. Oh, and I've put that env file in the wrong folder. It has to go alongside with Makefile, so it has to be root. Yep, now it's there. Make. Yep, up and running. So we have the names that come from our variable and Docker PS. Yep, beautiful. And now having that .env file set, we can move all our variables or anything that could possibly be changed there. Obviously we can move this section there. Also, we have that versions for the images. Not all of them have it. Those without it use latest as the version. So we're gonna move those versions in that file as well. let's try it. As you can see, now we have those latest versions specified. So what it gives us is we can easily change our configurations in one single file. So we have our PHP version. So if we want to test it with the higher or lower version, we can do it. Simply change the version, make down, make up, and here you go, you can test it. The same with the different Nginx, different MySQL. You can easily change your database user, password, or even database name. As you can see, this is a very powerful Docker-based development setup, but there is even more advanced version of this kind of setup. It's called Docker for Drupal by Vodby. Let's check it out. This is their GitHub repo. You can see all the files it includes, all the configurations, overview page, and what is the most beautiful thing about this setup, they have everything documented, like literally everything. They have their own images with different versions. They keep it up to date all the time. So you can check, for example, Nginx image. It has its own very detailed documentation with all the variables. You can change literally everything in their image, and it's really good by itself with the default configurations. So very great job, guys. But there is always a way to make it even better, so eventually we are gonna add more advanced features. But for now, in the next section, I'm gonna use Docker for Drupal as a base. I will explain you their setup and specifics you need to know, and eventually install Drupal. So let's move on. So initial.env file, pretty self-explainable, but still let's take a quick look. At the top of the document we have some useful links. Next we have some variables. So project name, I'm gonna change it to Drupal flow, base URL as well, and I'm gonna keep this default 8000 port. Next we see these database settings. So I'm only gonna change database name to Drupal flow. And what's interesting here, this database host. Basically it's just a host we're gonna connect to, and it doesn't matter what is it called. But it's pretty obvious that this setup uses MariaDB. And if you are on Linux or Mac with the Intel processor, you are totally fine. But guys, on ARM processors will have problem, and we're gonna fix that problem in the next videos. Okay, next section is just a MariaDB version, Drupal tag, not that important, and basically we're choosing between generations, PHP, and this one pretty important. As you can see, there is two different sections for Linux and for Mac, because they have a difference in default user IDs. Linux uses 1000 and Mac uses 501. So I'm on Mac, so I'm gonna change it to this. Okay, move on. Nginx, just a version of Nginx, and Nginx preset. Basically just pick a version you're gonna work with. Everything else is just pre-configurations for all possible containers you may use from the Vodby. It's not that important for us right now, so let's just take a quick look, and let's switch to Docker Compose. So nothing new, services, service name, image, and so on. And as you already know, we see image name, which is what be MariaDB for MariaDB service, and its version. Basically, the name of the variable we are assigning a version to. Container name, the same through variables, and this database settings from the .env file, and some optional settings. Basically everything that is commented out not that important, but they keep it just to show you all the power of this setup. And such as this is quick overview, I'm not gonna pay attention to all the details. So next one is PHP, the same, and we have all the variables available for us. Actually, not all of them, but I guess commonly used variables. Also, we have Xdebug settings, we have some user settings, so we can configure it in the way we want. They even have different settings for different operation systems for the Xdebug client, which is Linux, Windows, and Mac. Volumes. If you are Mac or Windows guy, you have performance issues, specifically with file system, because there is that I/O operations restrictions. So we're gonna use mutagen for Mac, and such as I'm not covering Windows here, probably there are some solutions there as well. So for now I only gonna delete this cached. I do not like this mode, but just keep in mind that we will fix that performance problem in the future. Okay, cron, pretty self-explainable, it's just a container for cron specifically. As I've said before, I do not like this mode, so just remove it. And Nginx, let's clean it up a bit. Mailhawk, it's local SMTP server with its own web interface, so we can monitor our email activities. Okay, Postgres, we're not gonna use it. Apache as well. That's for Apache. Varnish. Varnish is a cache server and we're not gonna use it. Redis, adminer, the same. PHP my admin. I won't use it, but I will keep it here. And in the next videos, I'm gonna show you how to use your internal PHP Storms database manager. Solar, Zookeeper, Drupal node, Memcached, RCSlog, Node, WebGrid, Elastic, Kibana, and we do not need all of this. Yeah, except PHP man. You do not have to remove it. I'm just like my projects clean, so I'm cleaning it up a bit. And of course, I know that in case I need something, I can copy it back from the Whatbis repo. Okay, traffic, we already know it. And we have some additional section here. We're not gonna use this, and we're not gonna use xmutagen. Xmutagen basically it's a DOM that has been built on top of Docker, and we're not gonna use it. We're gonna use mutagen natively. So let's remove it as well. Okay, so what do we have here? MariaDB, PHP, cron, Nginx, Mailhawk, and traffic. Basically, it's enough in most of the cases. Let's move on to Makefile. A default template, but it includes Docker MK. So let's take a look. And this is where all the magic happens. So that env file include default target, composer root, Drupal root. I'm gonna explain it a bit later. Some help section, docker mk, file, our up section, mutagen, and actually we do not need this. We're gonna use something different. Stop, restart, prune, ps, shell, composer, drush, and logs. I just noticed that the video already took over 25 minutes, so unfortunately I will stop here and I'm gonna start the next one with Drupal installation.